Hello, Chill Computer Guy. Today we're in Bitwig Studio 3. We're taking a look at the beta. Taking a look at the grid here. As you can see, I've emptied it out. It's completely empty. One thing, if you're going to use the grid, you want to be sure to have the inspector open. The inspector is going to tell you a lot of information as far as what's going on with the grid. And as far as each module you click on, it's going to give you tons of information on that module, including what that module is, how it works, and also the in and out input signals. Both CV, audio, and all that stuff, modulation coming in and out of that particular module. As you can see, we got this running through the amp. We got the amp preset. I believe it's the amp shaky, one of my favorite amp presets. Then we have a peak limiter with a -6 on the dB. That way we don't blow anybody's ears out. All right, so if you click once, the grid's going to open. If you click twice, it's going to close. Also, a little known thing is if you click once and then you pop the grid out, it'll get smaller. You can resize this any way you want, but if you drag it to the very top of the screen, you can get a full screen grid, which is pretty darn sweet. And that also, you still have the inspector panel there, and you can also zoom in and zoom out, lock your grid, do all the same stuff you can. The difference being that it's full screen, which is pretty cool here. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of build something real quick. We're going to start with an audio out. Now, another thing about the grid is some of these modules can be resized from the bottom and the right. If it's going to be resized, it's going to be from the right and the bottom, similar to the browser. If you get that double arrow, you can stretch that out. So we're going to make this oscilloscope a little bit bigger here, and we're going to plug that in to the output there. And then we're going to bring in an oscillator here. Let's go ahead and use a sine wave here. Plug that in there. And oh, there we go. We got our signal coming in. We can see that. We can skew it. So we can double click to reset everything. And remember, we're running through that amp device. That's why you're getting a little bit of overtone, a little bit of distortion there. This oscilloscope is not reflecting that distortion. This oscilloscope, the oscilloscope's actually pretty brilliant because you can actually see exactly what's going on with your signal before it's going on into each module. So I actually really prefer the oscilloscope kind of all over the place when you're building a patch. That way you can really see visually what's going on. You can also see that over here in the inspector as well, but I just kind of like having it on the screen there. Also, certain things have options like the oscilloscope. If you click on it here, you can see that it can go slow, it can go fast, or it can go pitch. Like if you hook up an LFO to this thing, for example, let's go with an LFO. You can see obviously that's a much slower type thing, but if you go into fast or slow, you can actually see your, well, maybe you can. Maybe you can! This kind of works sometimes and doesn't work other times, but it's not going to work. Yeah, it's not going to fucking work. Normally you can see the LFO, but in this particular case, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. I don't know. I think it's a little bug that they have here. Let's go back to our sine wave, our pitch. All right, let's go ahead and put an envelope in here real quick. That way it's not a constant. ADSR is good here. Now, again, when you're dragging a module in, if you click right here, so you get that highlighted on the edge there, it's going to hook it up to that particular module. If you you notice that if I have this connected to the output, and if I just drag it into the path, it's not going to connect it. I have to drag it right on to where the border is, where it lights up like that, and then it will actually connect that module, which you can drag over here. Also, if you don't like all these random colors going on, the colors represent, you know, like a signal gate, and you have your audio is red, and your pitch is orange, and your phase is purple and whatnot. But you can change the color of any of these modules. I like everything kind of one consistent color. Red, for example, or you can change everything to white or yellow or whatever you want to do. Keep it all consistent, you know, whatever you want to do here. Actually, I'm going to go with blue. I kind of like the blue look. So now, what's nice about this is you can actually see what's going on with the wave, but you can't hear it because I put the oscilloscope before the envelope. So it's kind of nice in that way. And you can see every key is going to have the same pitch. That's because this is not clicked. Basically, if you think about an actual modular system, you're going to have your gate here. You're going to have your yellow. And this is binary. This is on or off. Is your key pressed or is it not pressed? It's binary. It's very straightforward. The other one is going to be the phase. And this is going to be the phase of your wave. Then, of course, the other one is going to be your pitch, okay? And that's going to be your CV signal. What key are you hitting? So this is binary, on or off. Is the key on or off? And this is what key are you hitting? This is going to give you different pitch based on what key you're hitting on the keyboard. Now, a normal modular synthesis, these things need to be hooked up or you're not going to get any kind of information going to the oscillator. But here in the grid, you have these icons here you can click. And what that's going to do is it's automatically going to pitch track this oscillator according to your keyboard, which is kind of nice. That way it saves you a few connections and whatnot. Same with up here. And this is, of course, the icon for retrigger. And this is going to come into play if you have multiple oscillators. If you don't have them all triggered at the same time, they're going to tend to drift, so they won't always start at the same duty cycle of that particular wave, and that's what that does. Like I say, you have your on-off, you have your phase right here. That's the purple is the phase, and then the key tracking, the pitch, or the frequency. So what's actually pretty powerful about this is you can do your frequency modulation, you're also known as FM. You can do your phase modulation, known as PM. You can do all that right here in the grid. All you need to do is pull in another oscillator. We're going to use a sine wave because we're a traditionalist and whatnot. And if you hook this into the key tracking or the pitch or the frequency, whatever you want to call it, it's all the same. What you're actually doing is the output of this sine wave is actually controlling the frequency of this oscillator. Now, right now, you're not going to get any difference because this is zeroed out. But if you turn this up, you're getting some really brilliantly classic FM going on there, frequency modulation. Now, you can also hook this up to the phase, and now you're going to get phase modulation, a whole different modulation style. Again, you got to turn this up. Beautiful phase modulation. So this is very similar to the Phase 4. If you're familiar with Bitwig Studio, you've used the Phase 4, and that basically is kind of a phase modulation type synthesizer. But here in the grid, you can do either one. You can do frequency modulation, which is the bottom one here, which is basically modulating that frequency, or you can do phase modulation. Or you can actually use this exact same sine wave to do both. But I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, what about amplitude modulation? What about ring modulation? Well, you can do that too. God, I sound like a fucking salesman right now, don't I? All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to drag this sine wave over here. And we're going to bring it in, what's it under? I can't remember, is it level? I don't remember where this thing's at. Yeah, AM/RM. Okay, so this is ring modulation. And again, if you click on the header right there, it's going to automatically route that. And what this is amplitude modulation or ring modulation. The difference being is amplitude, you're actually modulating the actual amplitude of the signal. Or ring modulation, it has to do with kind of a modulation loop, if you will. Google that, and it'll give you a better description than I'm giving you. But so now what we're going to do is we're going to use the same exact sine wave, which is, let's go ahead and speed it up a little bit. Again, you can double click on any parameter. It doesn't matter. It'll reset it. Like if I do all these crazy parameters right here, just double click. It'll reset the whole thing. Very, very handy. Very, very nice. So now what we're doing is we're affecting the amplitude modulation with this sine wave. Let's go ahead and duplicate this oscilloscope here. Disconnect it here, and then we'll connect it right onto here so we can kind of see what's going on here. Let's go ahead and bring this down a little bit. Oh, wow. Can you not? Yeah, that's one thing about when you're at full screen. It's you don't have your navigator there. Oh man, that's just a puffy shag carpet 70s dirty kind of bass sound. You know, I love that. You know, being a child of the 80s, I freaking love that kind of dusty, dirty, you know, analog-y kind of. Now, if you bring this down all the way, that's amplitude modulation. So you can see that amplitude is just bouncing just slightly, you know, it's just slightly, you know, and as you bring it up, you can see it's just kind of jumping around, you know. Your amplitude's just kind of unstable. I'd say this is kind of making your amplitude unstable, you know, which is just, God, I mean, it just barks analog, you know. And then as you bring it up, you're getting into ring modulation, which is kind of chaotic. It's basically kind of like I don't want to call it a feedback loop, a modulation loop, but it's basically taking the signal and it's going around in a big circle. But when you bring this right down low, let me zoom in a little bit here again. When you bring the AMRM bridge or parameter or whatever you want to call it down very low, so you get a little bit of shakiness to the amplitude. That just really gives the signal a really kind of a human feel. The perfection of digital is I'm trying to get as far from that as possible. And with the grid and what you can do with the grid and the fact that you can just set up your, you know, your amplitude modulation, your ring modulation, your frequency modulation, your phase modulation, you can just hook it up exactly how you want it. You know, you can create, it's really quite an exciting thing. And the fact is this is, you know, barely touching the DSP. These modules are very well done. Also, don't forget you can add voices. This is just a mono sense, but you can add you know, if you want to make a chord or something, you can go, you know, up to 64 voices, which is kind of obnoxious. Plus you have the voice stacking and all these other things. I'm actually going to have a tutorial coming up on the inspector. They're just adding so much stuff here to Bitwig Studio as far as really being able to build a really powerful thing here in the grid. But yeah, of course you can add more voices. I'm going to go ahead and just, you know, add 8 voices, let's say. Now you can play a chord, for example. Just a beautiful sounding drift there. Anyway, so yeah, don't forget the inspector panel. Always have it open because there's going to be tons of information. Every single module you click on is going to show you information. A lot of the modules can be adjusted in the inspector panel, and all your information as far as your inputs and outputs of CV, modulation, audio, all that stuff is going to be in your inspector panel. And not only that, but you can also, change your instruments so you can have more voices. You can do voice stacking and all these other things here. And I am going to have a tutorial coming up on the inspector panel, so be sure to subscribe. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, tell a friend about the channel. Remember, these videos are not for beginners or experts, they're for everybody. My number one goal is to inspire you. We're in Bitwig Studio. We're going to talk about Bitwig Studio. Bitwig is where it's at. So if you have any friends or family or loved ones or pets that are into music production, especially Bitwig Studio, be sure to tell them about the channel. Be sure to click that bell so you don't miss anything. Comment, let me know what you want to see. And like I say, we're going to get the Deep Studio coming up probably in the next few months. We're moving everything kind of downstairs, setting up a studio so we can make more tutorials, better tutorials. I'm really going to commit some serious time and energy into this channel because I absolutely love Bitwig Studio. I do believe it's the DAW of the future. So be sure to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, comment below, tell a friend about the channel. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys again. Bye-bye now.